there is a clash between religious beliefs and constitutional rights in some Durban schools. Learners who belong to the Nazareth Baptist Church, known as Shambe, have been ordered to cut their hair, which is against their religion. The schools in question are said to be run by religious authorities, but their policies are not accommodating the Shambe religion. This raises questions about the balance between school policies and learners' freedom to practice their religion. The MEC for Education in KwaZulu-Natal, Mthandeni Ndlulungwane, has intervened in the matter. The department has established a hotline for learners to report such cases anonymously without risking being victimized by authorities. Ndlulungwane spelled out the department's position on the protection of learners' rights. Schools must not interfere with learners' cultures and religions. The Department of Education will take action against the violation of learners' rights, and learners' constitutional rights outweigh schools' hair policies. Ndlulungwane says schools should not infringe on learners' constitutional rights to practice their religions freely.
Schools are not allowed to interfere with the cultures of our learners. That's our stance. We're very clear. That's why we wrote to all of our schools to ensure that all of them, they can actually comply. If there are any reports of any suspension of any learner, we'll take that school and take very serious decisions against that school that is involved in that process. We're very clear as the province of KwaZulu-Natal that the code of conduct for the schools must be in compliance with if the school's code of conduct is in conflict or interferes with the constitution or interferes with the rights of a learner because of his or her religion, then that code of conduct is out of line, is unconstitutional, and therefore would not allow it.
And now joining us on the phone line is Togom Kwanazi, Aluva CRL Commission Chairperson. A very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time. What is your reaction to some of the Durban schools asking pupils to cut their hair?
What we have said, you see, this thing started a few months ago, and as the Civil Rights Commission, we went to investigate to find out what the issue was. And what we discovered was that learners are being forced to cut their hair in order for them to have access to school. And the other issue is that we then sat down with the department and said, there's a problem here. Please monitor this situation. But the thing continued. And the department did not intervene because when you have such a lot of schools doing the same thing, saying that their school policies should overrule the Constitution, then you have a problem. What we then said was these young people and their families and the church needs to go to the Equality Court for the court to make a ruling, because we can't base these issues on what the Education Department tells us now, when this problem has been on the table for over 4 months and they've done nothing. And now when we say we're going to facilitate that they go to church, and the department must be responding to this issue, because once you violate a child's rights, that's irreversible. These children are totally traumatized, emotionally traumatized, spiritually traumatized. And it can't be a matter of, okay, move on and sin no more. We don't think that's a viable option.
So at this moment, how fair is it to impose restrictions based on religious beliefs?
We strongly believe that the Constitution is very clear. We have a right to education. We have a right to practice your religion. And the school cannot make you choose between the two. So we feel a court decision will help us as we move forward, so as to discourage teachers from persisting to do the wrong thing all the time.
Now, I hear you saying that you could be taking court action. What kind of court ruling could we expect looking at this kind of violation at schools?
There are two things. One of what we'll be asking for is an apology from the teachers concerned, because they've also insulted the church itself and the leaders of the church. And secondly, we're going to ask the court to look at fining these teachers so that they pay a fine and thus be discouraged from ever doing anything like this, and to discourage others who are doing the same thing.
All right, thank you very much for that update. We were joined by Togo Mkwanazi Kaluva, CRL Commission Chairperson. And now still joining us live on this story from Durban is our reporter Zintle Mgadi. A very good afternoon to you, Zintle. At this moment, what exactly are the grievances of the students and the parents?
Well, thank you very much, Lisejo. We are here in Umlazi, actually outside one of the schools that practices this compulsory shaving of heads and has been practicing this for quite a number of years. And we spoke to some of the students here who've actually come to a point of accepting this kind of behavior, this kind of treatment from the schools, accepting it almost as a norm, as something that is acceptable, something that's beyond their control, that they cannot change. We spoke to learners that belong to the Shembe Church, and they said even though their culture does not permit them to shaving their heads, but actually encourages them to live a Nazarite lifestyle that includes looking like a Nazarite, meaning not shaving your head. But even though they believe in that religious belief, they've reached a point whereby they have to choose between the right to education or either practicing their religion, which then becomes that unfair gray area in this issue, where the learner now has to choose between going to school or clinging onto their religious beliefs. I know that the two boys that were expelled or suspended rather in Jozini, just north of Durban, a few months ago, one of them said that they found themselves in a place where they had to just go and shave their head, turn out to be a rebel, turn out to be a heathen, even amongst the religious leaders themselves, to say they had to shave their heads in order to access education. And they were saying in a local newspaper that the principal of the school, called Ezibuweni High School, the principal of that school actually told the learner that if you do not want to study in my school, then call your pastors to come and teach you. And those kind of insults, those kind of derogatory words that students face in KZN on a daily basis then draws that line of these students, these Shembe students, becoming discriminated and being isolated, which is then totally unconstitutional, especially since the Constitution backs up the right to religious practice and the right to education. But we spoke to the MEC of Education, Thandeni Dlungwana, and he came out very strongly against these practices. He also said that in order to breach the gap between learners and the province, he's willing to establish a call center where learners can call directly to the province and report these incidences, because he finds that in most cases learners report these incidences to teachers and principals, who then try and shy away and suppress those issues in the call to try and keep the school name clear or innocent in a sense. So the very same educators are the ones that are suppressing these students that are crying out for help.
And now I know you have said that you've spoken to some of the students at the school. Did you perhaps manage to speak to any of the school authorities, maybe the principals as well as the teachers, and what did they have to say about this issue that seems to have been continuing for quite some time now?
Well, Lesego, as you can understand, this is a very sensitive issue, and obviously, when we tried entering the Menzi High School, which I'm outside right now, outside the gates, we were denied entry. You will understand that teachers and principals themselves of these schools do not want to comment on these kind of things. They seem to be very press shy or media shy at this point, but when they are practicing these unconstitutional acts, they are not shy about it. We were denied entry. We haven't been able to speak to school management, but what we know, Lesego, at this point is that there are 7 schools in the province that the department has detected to be practicing this and to be discriminating learners on a daily basis based on their religion. And we know that the Department of Education says that they will launch an investigation. They're also calling out to learners to come out and report these things. Hence, there's a hotline that's going to be established soon. They're encouraging also the parents to write to the department, to the MEC himself, with regards to their concerns and with regards to these illegal practices that are happening in places of learning which are supposed to be a safe haven for children. But it's the very same place where children are being victimized, children are being discriminated, children are being isolated based on the kind of faith that they have chosen.
And now, Zinhle, you haven't really said much about these children's parents. Have the parents tried to involve themselves in this, trying to curb this shaving of heads at these schools? And you've, of course, said that it's now 7 schools that have been detected in KZN.
Well, we haven't been able to speak to the parents either. The parents feel that they don't want to comment, especially on camera, about this issue, especially since it's still under investigation. But parents also feel that the children will be victimized if they come out, especially in the media, and voice out how they feel and how disrespected the families really feel at this point by the schools that are involved in this. We haven't been able to speak to those, but I know that there's a family member in Jozini, which is a school we are still yet to go and visit and do a follow-up on what's happening in that school. A school in Jozini that I've mentioned earlier, Ezibugweni and Ezintlabeni, those 2 schools who have suspended 2 boys in that school because they blatantly refused to shave off their heads and said that they believe in what they believe in. They believe in their God and they will not shave their head in order to access education. Now, one of those boys, one of their brothers, wrote to the CRL Rights Commission complaining about this behavior and saying and explicitly explaining how derogatory and how disrespectful this act is, not only to the family but also to the church, to the Shembe Church itself. And they've asked for an intervention from the commission at this point. That's the family that I know have spoken out very openly about it. But the schools that are here in Umlazi that I've mentioned out to you, and those schools are Vela Bashega, Menzi, Kiliza, and various other schools here in Umlazi. Those schools and the parents that are affected by this kind of behavior from these schools have not wanted to speak to us, especially not on camera, saying this issue is still under investigation, and so they want to allow the law to take its course, and hopefully their children will be able to go to school without any victimization and fear of being isolated and discriminated by the teachers and the principals in these schools.
All right, thank you very much for that update. We were joined by ANN7 reporter Zinhle Mgadi, just giving us some more details as there is a clash between religious beliefs and constitutional rights in